Great. Hey folks, welcome to another installment in the 52-week MBA. The last couple of weeks have been a bit soft, if you like, in the terms we've been talking about mindset and things like that. So I thought this week we'd get a little bit more hard edge, but nonetheless do stuff that's very, very important. So today we'll be looking at the language of business. As we wait, and of course, as usual, there's no BS here. The stuff I'm going to teach today, the stuff I'm going to expose you to today is stuff that if you take notes, you can take and start using in your business straight away after this meeting finishes. And some of you should know this already. Some of it you may not know, but some of it might just be a reminder. But the bottom line, it's important you do it. You all know me, so I'm not going to go through this again. But again, I've been around for a fair while across a large number of roles, all business-wise, we can do it. So time is short, so we will keep going. So just raise your hands if you know your numbers, if you have a budget or a finance plan, and if you know what and where you're earning and spending. Thank you, Ross. Anyone else? Thank you, Alan. Yeah, there's a few people. Fantastic. That's good to see, because last time I did this, no one stuck their hand up. Okay. If you do not know your numbers, if you do not know where you're spending and earning, if you don't have a financial plan, what's your excuse? Here's some of the common ones. I've got no time. I'm too busy servicing customers or chasing leads or trying to get people on board. The big one is usually this sort of one, arithmophobia, the fear of numbers. We normally come into this sometime in high school, usually round about our 4th or 5th year of high school, which is when they start hitting us with algebra and integers and all that sort of fun stuff. That's when most people decide that maths is horrible and they don't want anything to do with it. The thing is, in business, numbers is the language of business. And numbers are so important to you to know if you're going to run a business as a business and not necessarily as a hobby that puts some money into your bank now and again. Really, if you know your numbers, then your overall ability to make decisions actually improves. It enables you to measure your performance against standards. It enables you to understand what's working, what's not working in your business quicker than waiting for it to find out. And quite frankly, it's the mark of a real business owner. This here shows a profit or loss of $19,000. Well, hopefully after we go through the rest of this presentation, you will know how to build things and understand your numbers to the extent that that's not going to be what next financial year looks like for you. There are 3 sets of numbers that all business owners need to know. They need to know how to read and understand a profit and loss report. That's the real basis of understanding the numbers in your business. They need to understand the value of your customers. You need to understand how much a customer contributes to the well-being of your business. And then there are 3 levers, and these are the things which really will help you scale your business. So profit and loss report really it's the basis for knowing your numbers. And we've already had the slide where this one was lost, but they look like this, and they can look and feel overwhelming. My God, so many columns, so many numbers, etc. All right. But really, when you're looking at them, there's only a couple of areas where worthwhile, and I have to apologize. All my highlights have disappeared off that slide. Nonetheless, the very top, I'm going to draw all over this slide. If I can annotate, will it let me? No, it won't. All right. So the top revenue is the most important line. That's the money that you're generating in your business. That's what's coming in. That's it. The next line is cost of goods sold, and that is how much it's costing you to supply your goods or services that people are paying you for. And if you subtract the cost of your goods sold from your revenue, that gives you your gross profit. And your gross profit's a really important line to understand, because from the gross profit, you pay everything else in your business. You pay yourself, you pay your staff, and you pay all of your expenses. There's a couple of terms used here like variable expenses and whatnot, which we will get to. But again, that $1 million is the important line. That's your revenue. That's how much it cost me to make $1 million. And that's how much money I had left over as profit, which I need to use to spend my other things. That also means, in terms of percentages, that I was running at a margin of 42%, which isn't bad. Or my gross profit was running at 57%. They'll become important soon. The other things underneath there, you have all the expenses, and the expenses are really important. See, the total expenses add up to 488,000 odd. So how do I pay for that? Well, the money in the gross profit is what has to cover that, which then means I've got a net profit of $85,000. So really what that's telling me in my profit and loss is I generated $1 million in income. It cost me $426 to provide the product or service to do that. After I took all my expenses out, which was $488,000 worth, out of that $1 million, I made a grand total of $85,500 or 8.6% as net operating. And that's not such a bad thing. So my expenses account for 48% of my turnover, which is probably a bit high, depending on your business, but there's this. The key thing to understand is your cost of goods sold or cost of services provided, which is called COGS or COSP. All right. They're the costs directly involved with providing your product or service. So if you make a widget and you sell it, it's what things have to go into that thing to produce it. And if you're doing a service, it's like what's involved in you selling or providing your service to customers, all right? It doesn't include your fixed costs like your rent, your electricity, your fines, your licenses, your insurance, and all that sort of thing. So the blue box is really what they call variable expenses because they can go up and down depending on how much you sell and how much you've got to make or deliver. The green box is what they call fixed. Now, yes, your electricity bill goes up or down, but you know you've got to pay electricity every single month. So they're called fixed. A really quick formula to figure out your gross profit is simply this: your revenue minus your cost of goods sold or cost of services provided tells you your gross profit. So drawing on the spreadsheet we just saw, I did $1 million in sale. The cost of the COGS was 426 grand. So that left a gross profit of 573,000. If we look at figuring out the gross profit percentage, it was 57.4% because the cost of goods represents 42% of what we sold. And then, of course, our gross profit minus our fixed expenses equals our net profit. So our gross profit was 573,800. Our fixed expenses, as you saw back there, were 488,300. That means we made a net profit of 85 grand or 8.6%. Nothing to get worried about. The key things, but they're the key numbers to understand. How much I've sold, how much it cost me to make the sales and what's left over, and then how much I need to use what's left over to pay to keep the business going, doors open, and how much it actually ends up in my bank. I often hear people talking about margin and markup, and they are two different things. Lots of people use them interchangeably as the same thing. They're not. Your margin is your profit percentage on sales. Your markup is your profit percentage on cost. So if something costs you, in fact, we'll just do it this way. The differences between margin and markup percentage are like this. If you want a 10% margin, your markup percentage is 11.1%. If you want a 20% margin, it's 25%. 30%, it's 42%. 40%, 66%. And to arrive at a 50% margin, it is 100%. So in other words, your margin is your profit on sales, okay? But in order to achieve the profit on sales you want, you need to look at your markup there. So if you want a 50% margin, I want 50% profit on out of my sales, then my markup on my cost has to be at least 100%. So in other words, to create your markup percentages, decide what your wanted margin is. It might be 60%, and divide that by the cost of goods, and that will give you your markup percentage. So in each of these, that's how you work it. But margin and markup are two different things, but they're both very important to understand. I won't spend a lot of time here. There's a thing called a chart of accounts. A chart of accounts lists all of the incomings and outgoings in your business. A good chart of accounts literally enables you to look at all the things that you pay for to run your business. There's lots of them out there. What you need to do if you're going to use one is to go through and take out all the things that you don't actually use yourself. So on this one here, you're unlikely to be paying a mortgage on your premises, but you might be paying fuel and oil because you're running a car. Journals and periodicals used to be a big one, but maybe you're not subscribing to those things. You could take those out anymore. Maybe you do your own cleaning at the office, so you don't need cleaning. The key thing to understand is your fixed expenses go into a chart of accounts, and a chart of accounts is where you try to find and account for all the things you pay money for in order to keep your business going and to deliver whatever it is that you happen to do. You can see down this part here, down the end. I wonder, will I do that? No, it won't let me. Down here, after you've got all your total operating costs, people often add in a 5% contingency in case something goes wrong. It gives them a buffer, so you can look at that. Let's have a word about accountants. In some circles, I've got a bit of a reputation for sacking accountants because, quite frankly, most accountants are historians. They're not proactive, right? They're very good at telling you what did happen, but not what is happening and what's likely to happen. I had a client a couple of years ago who was an interior decorator and designer for very high-end people. And she told me about a meeting she had with her accountant just before she sacked him, where he said, "You've had a fantastic year. Your profit's $342,000. And she said, "Well, that's great, but it's not in my bank. Where is it?" And he said, "Oh, that's a paper profit." In other words, it didn't really exist. You want to have an accountant who helps you set up your budgets. You want someone who gives you a P&L every month on your business. You want them to give you a thing called a budget variance report, which is literally a report they give you that says, this is your budget, this is the actual numbers, and here's the difference between the two. That way, it enables you to very quickly find when things are spiraling out of control. Maybe your rent's gone up and you didn't see it. Maybe your cost of some raw goods has gone up, but it's really important, the budget variance report. If they're very helpful, they'll give you a monthly cash flow report, what you can expect to be coming in every week of the month. They might give you a monthly profit forecast, but really that budget variance report. So what you should be expecting from them is them to help you set up your budget, and for them to then on a monthly basis give you a profit and loss along with a variance report to tell you what areas of your budget are above or below your budgeted numbers. You decide a percentage. I work off 3%. But if anything on my P&L is above or below the budget by 3%, it's got to go onto a budget variance report, which helps me highlight and take action quickly on things I may need to change in my business. It also saves me doing a line-by-line check through my entire chart of accounts once a month. I do it anyway, and so should you, but the bottom line is it's great getting a budget variance report to tell you where things are going really well, better than expected, or things that are costing you more money than you expected to. I'll tell you now, most accountants won't do this. Most accountants are happy to do your best through a bookkeeper, and they're happy to meet with you twice a year to do what they call tax planning, and that's not enough. You really want an accountant who thinks like a part-time or fractional chief financial officer for your business. You want someone who's going to be helping you leverage your income and finances, not just report on it. Okay, tax is a big thing. It grows about a foot a year in terms of linear paper from the Australian government. It's a lot to keep up with, but that's not enough anymore for an accountant just to do your tax. You need them to actually be involved in your business and make it easier for you to see what's happening, certainly as close to immediate as you possibly can. All right. 3 sets of numbers you need to know. Okay, so this is number one. You need to understand the value of your customers that they bring to your business. So ask yourself, do you know how much it costs to get a new customer? I mean, what's it cost for an ad on Facebook to land you at least a lead, for instance? How much do you make from every transaction with a customer? How long does the customer stick around with you? And how many new customers bring existing customers to you? In other words, how many of your customers actively refer new business to you? Customer value, the key ones you need to understand are a thing called ATV, average transaction value. In other words, you take the sales and you divide it by the number of transactions you had to make the sales, and that gives you an average transaction value. Simple maths. I made $100 in sales. I did it with 10 sales, so each sale's worth $10. So my ATV on $100 is $10. Handy to know, right? Lifespan. You need to know how long a customer stays a customer. Do they stay with you? Do they only buy from you once? Do they buy for you from 6 months or 12 months or 3 years? Because that gives you your customer lifetime value. So if you look at the average number of transactions a customer does with you, again, say they do 10 transactions a year with you, that means the average transaction value, we said $10 times 10 transactions over a year means that customer is worth $100 a year to you. And if they leave after a year, that means that their lifetime value to you is $100. So you know every customer you get is roughly worth $100 to you. So you can help plan your leads and landing of customers. Your average transaction value helps you do budgets and stuff, which I'll get to shortly. And the third thing you need to know is the 3 levers. The 3 levers, you've heard me talk about it before, most of you. There's only 3 levers. There's revenue, there's capacity to deliver and keep promises, and there is the ability to control your costs. Fix your revenue, you've got to be top line driven. You have to be going all out for sales. I would say most of you, in my experience working with clients, probably one of the first things I do with 99% of them is I raise their prices between 10 and 20%. Because they're undercooking their pricing. So you can probably increase your prices. And understand this, if you increase your prices by 10%, you would have to lose 25% of your customers to make less money than you are today. And no one's going to lose 25% of their customers over the 10% price increase. So a 10% price increase will put more money and profit into your pocket. You can increase your revenue by adding products, by expanding your range or adding different offerings. You can make things run out quicker. One of the big things at the moment is people are taking Ozempic and Wegovy and those sorts of things. If you take Wegovy, they come in a pen and you've got to go so many clicks. What some doctors are doing is they actually start you off with like a quarter of the clicks recommended by Wegovy because they found out you actually don't need a big hit of the drug, the GLP drug, up front. You need to build up over time. So instead of it costing you $300 a month to get one of these things, you can buy one, but actually takes 3 months to go through it. So that's actually making it stick out. So what Wegovy and those guys have done is they've decreased what they call the utility of the product by making you use more than you need, so you burn through it quickly. The other example some of you've heard me use is years ago when Soap on Tap came out from Johnson & Johnson, fantastic product, everyone loved it, but they weren't selling a lot. The reason being was it lasted so long, so they fixed it. The diameter of the spout, they increased the diameter of the spout by 30%, which means people used it 60% quicker, which increased their sales turnover. So a small tweak like that. So is there something you can do with your products or services where you can make people use them more quickly or need to come back more often for them? Of course, you can do the McDonald's thing. You can have upsells, downsells, cross-sells. You can sell more to existing clients. They're always the easiest person to sell things to. And the big one is to get more clients themselves. Capacity, this is something most people don't talk about, and it's so important. You know, if I'd said to each of you, you've got 30 new customers starting tomorrow, how many of you could handle it? Not a lot of us. I certainly couldn't. Okay. So you have to have a very clear idea of your capacity to take on customers. How many customers can you deal with? Now, in my one-to-one coaching side of my business, I've had as many as 18 people, nearly killed me, and I'm sure they didn't get as good a service as I want. Now I don't work with any more than 9 in a month. So that's my capacity for one-to-one is 9. If I'm working in a group circumstance, I can take 30. So you need to understand your capacity. So how much more business can you deal with, right? And what do you need to deal with that 20% or 30% more? Do you need to bring on a VA? Do you need more staff? Do you need to train someone in what you do? I mean, in Christie's world of NDIS and all that sort of stuff, it's bringing on skilled workers to help deal with capacity. But what do you need, right? So it's workforce planning, all right? It's also the mechanics. If you're physically making something or producing something for someone, if you're a graphic artist, then it's like, how much time do you need to deliver things? What's your capacity to deliver? And the other part of capacity is you have to deliver your promise. So if you've promised someone they'll get this result in 3 months, you've got to make sure they get that result in 3 months. You know, if you promise them you'll have something delivered by Tuesday next week, you've got to get it to them Monday night next week. So capacity is not just your capacity to work with people or customers. It's also your capacity to produce and deliver, and more importantly, keep your promises. Years ago, when I was running a shop fitting organisation or an organisation that used shop fitters, I used to tell the shop fitters I needed the shop completed a full 5 weeks before I really needed it, because that way I knew I'd be opening on time. But if I just let them, if I didn't put the pressure on them to finish 5 weeks earlier than I needed, what happened was I used to open the stores late. So that was because I understood the capacity. So in your business, what's your capacity? Cost control. Well, you've got to understand the variable costs in your business. If your sales go up, are there any costs in your business that go up along with them? Look at your fixed costs. Are there any things in there? Are you paying for, is your business paying for a gym membership and you haven't been to the gym for 12 months? And get rid of it. Are you subscribing to letters or newspapers or things? Get rid of them. Are there things your business paying for that it shouldn't be paying for? I mean, if it's paying for Spotify, that shouldn't be a business expense. That's a personal expense. So you need to go through your chart of accounts. Again, your accountant should give you a chart of accounts, a decent chart of accounts, which is customized to your business. And you should go through the expenses line by line and see if it's still relevant and if you still need it. One of the easiest ways to reduce your costs is to get fresh quotes. Yesterday morning, I got my renewal notice for third-party insurance, compulsory third party, all right? And it's due when? Surprise, surprise, by Friday. So they do that, insurance companies, to give you not enough time to go out and get quotes. What they don't know is in my diary, I had 2 weeks ago telling it was coming up, and I've gone around and got some quotes, and I've already changed insurers. So, but insurance, make sure you get quotes. If you're not happy with your current internet provider, your current telecommunications provider, your current electricity provider, then get fresh quotes or tell them you're leaving for someone else. You'll be amazed how quickly they adjust their rates. Bottom line is, whatever you're spending in terms of expenses, don't just accept it at face value. Ask, is it still relevant? Do you still need it? And of course, can you get a better price by going with someone else or threatening to go to someone else? Most important of all. That brings us to the dreaded B word, the budget. You need to have a budget. A budget is nothing more than goal setting for your business that's been reduced to numbers. Okay, goal setting for your business that's been reduced to numbers. And there's a number of ways that you can actually create these. We'll go through some in a moment. Look, they're actually quite easy to set up, all right? Your bookkeeper or your accountant should do one for you, or should at least help you put one together. Even if you just knock one up yourself in Excel, something is better than nothing, because no budget means you've got less ability to control your business, and that reduces your chances of success. You really do need to have a budget of some description, even if it's just a sales and profit budget, without going into budgets for particular parts of your business. One of the ways I teach my clients the budget is called the 10 for 12 method. Most people decide they want to do X amount of revenue and they divide it by 12. So if I wanted to do 120 grand, most people would say divide it by 12. That means I have to do 10 grand sales a month. That doesn't allow for the fact that in every single industry, there is at least 8 weeks or 2 months a year when nothing much happens. Here in Australia, we tend to shut down somewhere in December, middle of December, and we don't get back to the kids are back at school middle of February. So it can go out to almost 3 months. So I teach my clients to pick a number, say it's 120 grand, divide it by 10, which means 12 grand a month, not 10 grand a month by 12. And that way I can hit my budget in 10 months, which is February to the end of November in this case. And then whatever money I earn in December and January is gravy, or as I call it, it's my holiday fund. So don't just look at what you want to earn in a year and divide it by 12. It's much better if you look at what you want to earn in a year and divide it by 10. So you've got a couple of months where you're going to be making some form of extra money, and you know you're going to hit your budget sooner rather than later. You can do the average transaction value method as well, which is literally pick your revenue target and divide it by your average transaction value. So again, if you want to do 100 grand a year and your average transaction value is $100, then you need to do 1,000 transactions. It's really simple. And then you split those transactions. Once you understand that number, you check your history for high and low sales months, and then you plug your numbers in appropriately. So some months you might be budgeting to do 150 and only 50 the other one, etc. But this is another way that you can do it, by understanding your average transaction value. Average transaction value is really important because it tells you how many transactions you need to do. And if you know your customer value, it also tells you how many customers you need to get each year. So if you're running a marketing program and you know you've got to be bringing in 20 customers a month, but you are consistently only bringing in 10 or 12, it tells you very quickly you've got to improve your marketing or you're not going to hit your targets. So you can do straight revenue, you can do the 10 for 12, you can do average transaction value, you can do customer value. It's up to you. It's just finding a method that works. This is another popular one if you sell more than one type of product or service. It's called the product mix method. And that's literally by looking at the percentage each of your products or services brings to sales and then applying that to your budget. So if I wanted to do 100K, make it easy, and I know my product number one gives me 40% of my sales, and product number two gives me 20% of my sales. If I want to get 100K, I know product one has to be budgeted for about 40 grand in sales for the year, and product two is 20 grand. So that gives me 60 of my 100K. How do I fill the rest in? Well, I might have product 3 or 4, or I might look at product 1 and go, how can I get that to 50 and how can I get product 2 to 30? It's up to you. But again, if you understand, if you've got multiple products or services, what percentage that each one contributes to your overall sales, it's easy to plan properly. It's also easy to identify products or services which actually aren't working anymore. If you've got something that's giving you 2 or 3% of sales, why are you bothering with it? If you've got something that's giving you less than 10% of sales, why are you bothering with it? So look at the product mix thing. All right, a lot of information done really quickly. So if you'd like a hand with this, as always, help is available. Please, let's have a chat. I can walk you through this and help you set some basic stuff up or whatever. That's it. Any questions? Thank you.
Anybody got any questions for Geoff? I'll just...
Only some feedback and comment from being a lender with the bank.